project to product. So this talk's probably about 5 to 10 years old. Obviously, companies have been making this journey, thinking about making this journey. So hopefully there's a few tips today to help you guys. So just want to say a big hello from me and all the staff at Burendo, and say thank you to you guys for attending. We did move the slot to an earlier slot. I think it was 6 o'clock previously, which is a little bit too late, even though we have a free bar and we're in the centre of Leeds. So yeah, just a little bit about me. If you don't know me, I know a few faces. Glenn Crossley, founder of the Bad Toolkit and Burendo. So 2 things which we'll come on to. So I don't know if many people know much. I'll start off with any questions before we start, or any questions during. Raise your hand. More than happy to kind of make it an interactive session rather than just kind of me telling through the slides. Also, Burendo, for every person here, as you can see, we're nominating donating a bag to the Crossley Trust for every attendee, and at the end as well, if you scan the QR code, we're also donating an additional bag, so it's definitely well worth it. So the Bad Toolkit, I'll not dwell on this too much. It was something that we started probably about 5 years ago, myself and a couple of other like-minded people, just looking around all the sort of best ways of working that we'd seen in the industry, whether you come from a project background, a Scrum background, a Safe background, it doesn't matter. Let's pull all together the best ways of working that we'd seen. And the concept was, if we put this into a toolkit, then anyone can use it. It's not ours, it's just good practice and best practice that we've seen. So the good news is it's out there. When we first launched, there was about 1,000 downloads worldwide. So it's really interesting to see the types of people downloading the content, whether they be big, large corporate organisations or startups. And it's regularly getting updated with new content as well. There's also community groups. So we've got them as far as Berlin, right through to Manchester. There's a new one in the northeast starting. So starting to get quite a lot of following. So what is the Bad Toolkit in terms of content? So it's full of it's basically, as it says, an open source set of tools and techniques. There's practitioners involved, so people like myself who have come across these great ideas. There's people such as adopters who want to use it, and there's people such as contributors who want to make it better. And you can see that it kind of tries to blend the best bits of all the different methodologies out there. So if you're a fan of Scrum, you'll see elements of Scrum in there. If you've used some of the other frameworks, you'll see elements of that in there. If you want to download any of the pictures on the wall or any of the content, just go to the download section, and there's some nice examples as well. So enough about bad. Today's talk, we've got 5 points. There's probably about 10 in this talk normally. If you're talking about how do you go from project to product, there's a lot of factors. Obviously, I can't cover everything in tonight's talk, so I'll try and cover as much as we can. But I want to start talking about the successful companies, and what I mean by that, we'll see the ones that can really pivot, the ones that are not wedded to a project methodology can really pivot to what the customers need. Talk about the key differences. Obviously, it's good to see what do we mean by a project and a product. There's something called the iron triangle out there, which is really associated with funding and the differences. Automation and product ownership. And like I said, there's probably about another 5 topics on there we could cover, but we've got a Q&A section at the end as well. So who's this for? So anyone really who's thinking about that journey, tried the journey, looking for some hints and tips, but yeah, basically anyone who's wanting some building blocks, some knowledge that will help them on that transition. So successful companies. If you look out there, you're probably looking at the more successful companies, and there's more, just a few, but just a question out there, let's pick one. Apple, successful company. What do we know Apple for? What's the first thing that springs to mind? Anyone give me an answer? Yep. In terms of products, what do they sell? iPhones, great one. Macs, yep. I started off with an iMac. Any more? iPods, yep. And many more, as you can see. Apple Music, Apple Watches, you name it. They're a company that can really pivot direction to meet what the customer needs. If you think of Google, probably started off as a search engine, but now you've got Google owned products, or you've got obviously they're a web service provider. And Amazon started off as a books store, and now what is it? It's the biggest probably e-commerce website in the world, but they've got web space. They've got Amazon Home. So the concept is that the best companies out there are the ones that can really respond, react, and pivot, and not just be kind of a one-stop shop. And the reason why they can pivot is because they've got some quick methodologies in place that allows them to respond to the market. So, there we go. It's going too quick, so I don't like this clicker. There you go. So, there we go, wrong way. Who gave me this clicker? Who gave me this clicker? Right, I'll start again. Where are we? I got trigger happy with the clicker.
If you click on the bottom one there, it goes back.
Right, we'll get there. Apologies. We're nearly there. Here we go. Right. So, yeah, the most successful companies are the ones that can pivot. But what if you can't pivot? And this is probably something that resonates with a lot of you guys out there, is that what we tend to see out in industry is that there's lots of methodologies in single organisations that don't really work well with each other, and just kind of walking through them, you've typically got your kind of your business change functions, your project managers, wedded to Prince 2. I was a Prince 2 practitioner years ago. You've got your architects aligned to TOGAF. You've probably got your BAs that align to Waterfall. The dev teams tend to be working in kind of an Agile or a Scrum methodology. Your testers working in V model, and your service teams in ITIL. So if a new idea comes into the business, we can't pivot. We've got to go through a kind of a gated stage process. We've got to go through lots of architecture, big upfront design. We've got to go and specify what we need in big documents. We can start building stuff, but then there's a massive test phase at the end, which means we can't release software, and then we've got to hand it over to another service team. That means we've got to go through a kind of a tough framework such as ITIL before we can get it live. So you probably end up with like a company like one of these, because they can't pivot, they can't change direction, they can't innovate. But that's the reality, is why a company is wanting to move to a more agile way of working, get closer to their customers so they know what they want, to move to more of a product-centric organisation. So it does sort of hit home. So looking at this transition from project to product, what we're kind of saying, and this is something in 2013 that I came across, many CIOs, leaders are under increasing pressure to create these new digital businesses that are more technology leveraged, that will drive revenue growth. Most traditional IT organisations are project centric, and their current staff capabilities are not suited really for creating these customer facing products. Product centric approaches make it easier to rapidly innovate, pivot and iterate by focusing on the customer experience, evolving requirements. So that's why we're wanting to change. They want to get close to their customers, they want to enter the digital space, and we want the tools in place to quickly move direction. So just a few differences what we see out there. So obviously what we mean by a project is typically something that's got a start and an end date. It's something where the team has got a shelf life. So in the past, in my sort of previous head of roles, I've recruited a project team to stand up, deliver the project, and stand down. It typically involves some sort of big upfront design. So go away, guys, go and study this, come back with a solution that works. So you're talking about delivering the full project scope, everything that you've specified, and value is not delivered till the end of the project. So that's what we typically see. Whereas in a product world, obviously it's evolutionary until the product is no longer required, which it sometimes happens. You need a long-lived product team that's going to support, maintain, and deliver features. We're talking about adaptive planning in there that allows you to pivot direction, constantly improving, making improvements to the system, but moving to this value-delivered organisation. Don't know if many people have come across this context, Mode 1 versus Mode 2. It was a Gartner thing back in the day. But you can see the key differences. So when we're talking about Mode 1, we're talking about things like PIDs and budget trackers and statement of works and non-functionals and wireframes and races, all that kind of stuff. Whereas over on the Mode 2 side of things, we're talking about the very rough order of magnitude, the epics, the themes. We're talking about impact assessments, spikes, wireframes, featured backlogs. So this is a clear difference. Now, what we tend to see is that companies try to operate in a mode 1.5. So they kind of say, yeah, we can do some of this. We can have a backlog in Jira with our epics and stories. But we need this. We need this mode 1 PMO function that's literally going to control what we spend and how much we spend. So that probably resonate with people out there. Yep, good stuff. Well, the good news is we can change that. So we can start to move our PMO teams, and there's a couple of guys I was speaking to earlier in PMO, from this traditional PMO to more of an agile PMO, which is more aligned with product. So moving away from controlling things to be that trusted advisor, predictive milestones, to talking about rolling out outcome-based roadmaps, thousands of projects to actually the limited portfolio of work in progress. As we say, rather than talking about RAG statuses, we're talking about outcomes and benefits and learning, moving away from gated reviews to continuous engagement, and generally moving to this value enabled team. I kind of put a little bit of a kind of a metric in the bottom right hand corner. That's something we've used in the past called the ROI totalizer. Austin told me he got it from Blue Peter back in the day. But it really does work. It's kind of saying, well, in terms of the cost of the team is £1 million a year, but actually if we deliver value, we can exceed that million and we can start to focus on value. Yeah, and we see quite a lot of teams and helping current teams make that transition, because it's not easy. If you've worked in this way of working for the last 20 years, change is not easy. So we want to move away from this concept of people that are wedded to methodologies and they're not really resistant to change, to all working in as one team, whether you be an SME of the business, a product owner, BA. We can see that there's roles for all these people in here. The difference is you're going to work together. And it's a little bit like rowing in the same canoe as a team. We don't want to have these handoffs as we go along. We want people collaborating. So how do you do that? So it's easy to say, yeah, let's put everyone in one team and let's sit them on the same desk, or let's assign them a kind of to a product. But you've still got to have a concept of how do we get you aligned to a product, and more importantly, how do we create a kind of a delivery life cycle that means everyone's involved in this stage, but they're not wedded to their methodology. So couple of examples in the BAD toolkit that we've seen that really works. We've got something called the VMOS canvas. So this is all about what does the vision look like, what's our mission, objective, strategy and tactics. This is all about strategic alignment. What does the future look like for our product? Who's our customers? What's happening in industry? What's the levers that are going to change? So looking at strategic ways forward is something that typically gets missed in project world. We're looking at some methods that allow us to quickly validate ideas. So if someone says we've got a great idea, we should build this new feature, well, let's validate that. Different methodologies use different things. different naming conventions, but they're all the same thing. We talk about this inception, so getting yourself really ready to start delivery, breaking it down. What we don't want to do is spend 6 months using going through discovery inception. We want to take a few days here. We want to take a few days here. You've not got all the answers, but you've got enough to start. Obviously, we're going to start. We're going to deliver some products. We're going to build some stuff, and then we're going to run it and maintain it. So you've got a full end-to-end team that's really sort of aligned to what does the future look like? Can we break things down rapidly? Can we shape it? Can we deliver it? Can we support and maintain it? All those roles in the previous slide. Oops, sorry, it's gone again. Oh God. Here we go. All these roles in the previous slide are needed in the new squad. Obviously, you've got different skills and different behaviours and different mindsets, but that's something that we can help you adopt and make that transition. Any questions before I move on?
Who's the SRE?
The SRE is a service reliability engineer. So what you tend to find is in most teams, especially with the devs, they want to build functionality, but they don't typically want to support it. The service reliability engineer's got a great mindset to think about the service dashboards. So if we build this new app, what's the monitoring, alerting, what's the logging? So having that operational mindset in the team is really critical. And same with the tester. So having the testers in the team is really important because, yep.
Sorry, Dan.
You're right.
Just prompted me from the SRE side of it.
Mm-hmm.
On the development of this going forward, where do you see DevOps, DevSecOps, DataOps, FinOps, all of that, those bingo words, shall we say? Are they sitting in there as well? Or are you thinking that the SRE would cover that, or is it a blended role?
Yeah, it depends on the organisation maturity. In effect, have you seen the DevOps topologies? Yeah, and I think there's different flavours, and you typically start off with they're probably two separate units. Then you put something in the middle and say we've got these are shifting left and they're shifting right. But ideally, you want them all in the same team supporting the products. And again, because they can respond quickly, they've built the product, they live and breathe it. So yeah, you want people working together as much as you can rather than an handoff. I'm tempted to use the keyboard here. Oh God, I'm having a nightmare. Right. The iron triangle. Anyone come across this?
Game of Thrones.
Yep. So when we're talking about the iron triangle, we're talking about funding. So if you think about funding a project, the only thing you're asked about is these two things. How much is it going to cost and when will I get it? That's the only thing I've ever been asked in as a project. Glenn, can you build us this website? Yes. How much is it going to cost and when will I get it? What we should be... Yeah, and it's a really good point. And what we should be focusing about is the features and the quality. So over this side, what we tend to find is with the product team, you can fund a team for 12 months. So you can say, do you know what, we're going to fund a team for 12 months. That's your time variable. It's probably going to cost you circa best part of £1 million. But once you've set those two variables, they're fixed. We're then going to focus on the features. So are those features generating value? Can we build them to a level of quality? And the best example I use of this is, I was telling the guys earlier, about 4 or 5 years ago, I built a house. And I was speaking to the builder, and I said, how long is it going to take and how much to build a house? And he said, I don't know what you want. So I said, fair enough. And that's the sort of questions that I got typically asked. What's the scope of it? So he said, if you give me some... He said, I'll give you a good answer. He said, it's never took me less than 2 months, and it's never took me more than 6, so between 2 and 6 months. But if you tell me what you want, I'll give you something more accurate. And it started to resonate in terms of this discovery framework. Well, actually, the more information I get, I'll give you something more refined. So you're going from a very rough order of magnitude between 2 and 6. Once I tell him what I want, he said, yeah, probably about 4 months feels about right. But then the penny dropped, because as he gave me a cost, let's just say he said, you're going to be in for Easter, I'll have it built by Easter, and this was October time, and it's going to cost you 100,000 as an example. Great, I've got a cost and a time. What I should have been focusing on, what's the value of this? What's the return on investment for me? So if you build me a house and I sold it, how much money would I get back? But I wasn't focused on that. We was focused on time and cost. And what happens in this world, and you see it in the IT industry, is that because the builder was late, he said, you're not going to be in for Easter, you're going to be in for Spring Bank, and I need another 10,000 because I've got my estimate wrong. The relationship breaks down. What we should have been saying is, well, actually, you've got your house, rather than making 100,000 profit, you've made 90,000 profit. You're still in a good place. We're still in a good place in terms of the return on investment from my outlay. So I think that's where it really resonated with this, using a kind of a non-case that's relevant to IT. But yeah, you probably, like me in my previous role, used to get asked all the time, how much are you going to cost? When we shifted to this model back in the days when I was head of delivery at Hitachi, we had squads. They were circa £1 million a year, and we started focusing on really what's the things that are going to really add value to the business, which markets could we go to, and it starts to change the culture, because you're then starting to get competition between teams who can generate the most value. So it pushes the product owners to have a healthy competition. Using your ROI totalizers as well, you're starting to get movement. Okay, so automation. So when I talked about the test phase at the end, I think we've all worked there, and there's nothing more frustrating when you can deliver some software, but then it's got to go through a massive test phase, and you can't get it out the door because guess what? They've found 1,000 defects, and you can't ship it. So what we're trying to do in this product world is, it's not just about generating ROI. We want to really invest in automation. So what we mean by this is, we've got this concept called the test pyramid, and the test pyramid has got unit tests at the bottom. That's all the code tests. You've got component tests, you've got system tests, and you've got this top layer, which is the UI. So the concept is, we want to automate as much as we can. Obviously there's things we can't automate, some things like fonts and colours and maybe sizes. You need that manual input. But if we can start to automate as much as we can and have confidence that every time there's a release going out there, we're not going to have any defects, you can get things out the door quicker. So we can reduce our UAT cycle to hours, because the only thing we want to do really is some acceptance testing and some exploratory testing, and then we can ship it. Again, going back to previous company I worked for, we shipped a product. We never had a defect in 6 months, and it was because every time we run our tests, we were confident. So investing in that automation is a big step, but it's certainly the right one. And as you can see from here, there's different tools you can use on your journey, whether they be sort of BDD tests, unit tests, security testing, UI testing, performance testing. It definitely certainly helps. So what else can we do? So we can assign a product owner or product manager, and we tend to see different flavors out there in the industry. Obviously working with some customers now where they're taking the product owners from the business as SMEs, but they've not necessarily got the skills, so we can start to train them. But yeah, the first thing we should really do is look at this product owner role, this product manager role, someone who can really research the market needs and customers so we can pivot, someone who can set the vision for the product, where we want to go, sell that vision to the rest of the organisation and the team, define and prioritise the business outcomes, work with the team to translate the outcomes into features, and work across the whole organisation. So without that, you're really stuck. You're still in the project world. You're still all about delivering time and cost. So to wrap up, recommendations. So I think the best knowledge has just been to organise teams around products rather than projects. Keep teams together, don't disband them. I think I use the concept quite a lot of this forming, storming, norming, performing, where a team forms, you then go to storming because no one knows each other. You then go to this kind of norming where everyone works well, and then performing. You get a team that's really performing, and because the project's ended, you disband them. Sounds like you guys have had this in the past.
Our boss says norming all the time. We do a shot every time he says it. The glass is empty though.
But it does really work. I think, like I say, I've seen some awesome teams in the past, and they've gone through that stage. The project's delivered and they've gone. So we're kind of saying, don't do that. Keep the teams together. They work well together. They know each other. They've got the process in place. They understand the tooling. Keep them together. Fund teams annually, and shift the focus around delivering value. So get away from that. How much does it cost? When am I going to get it? Invest in that product life cycle as the core for driving that vision, that strategy, that roadmap that will allow that organisation to pivot. Don't mix modes 1 and 2. I think, how do you roll out? Where would you start on this? I would say carve off an area. So, for example, in a previous company where we were 100% waterfall or project-led, we said, well, it's a big ask to kind of change the organisation overnight. Ain't going to happen. Let's just carve off one area with one team. Let's show how it works. Let's create a poster child. Let's really kind of make it look and feel different. And guess what? Before you know it, you've got team 2 and team 3. So we went from probably having 100% to 70-30, and probably when I left 3 or 4 years later, it was probably about 13 project world and 17 product world. Purely because there were projects that were still coming up, regulatory things that were cropping out there. You probably couldn't assign them to a product, but they probably had a defined start and end date. So let's just keep them as projects. But let's be mindful that they need mode 1 outputs and artifacts. Don't try and mix modes. But get the right people, the right skills, mentality, because there's nothing worse than making the transition and then having someone who says this is never going to work, because it'll not work. You've got to train the people. We do quite a lot of training with, for example, BAs, in terms of, rather than writing functional specs, let's show you how to create mind maps, and show you decompose down from epics to stories. So use these rapid prototyping tools. Invest in automation. But yeah, like I said, there's possibly a lot more out there, as you guys have probably come across, certainly around tooling and culture. I think they're big topics in this. But yeah, hopefully that's gave everyone a good insight.